Some of you that came down to Delirium on Friday might be expecting me to do a talk on origami. This is a King Cobra model. Yes, it is one sheet of paper, one very long sheet of paper, albeit, but we're not talking about that. I have something of a deep, dark secret. I'm actually something of an awful person. By awful, I don't mean necessarily bad, although we can argue about that. I mean in the sense of an adult fan of Lego, AFOL. In this case, this is obviously not my work, thankfully, unfortunately. It's been, this is a model that I found at random. One problem that I have living as I do as an expat overseas is most of my collection of bricks is in the US, as I cannot have them shipped over here. So instead of something on this scale, I'm kind of forced to work on a much smaller scale. I believe I'm allowed to call that a laser sword. Thank you, Lucasfilm. So a much smaller part count, much smaller. Now, when you are stuck far from home and need more sets or go to Bricklink, you need a little bit of creativity. You can't quite build on this scale. Yes, that is a real live adult there. This is a model of St. Pancras Station in London, if you've been there. And yes, the trains going in and out do work. They in fact go all the way around the exhibit and back to the bridge that you see in back. This, I think, was taken at Lego World in London in 2015. I was lucky enough to be there. So a lot of pieces, a lot of piece count. And unfortunately, most people don't have that many pieces. But luckily for us, we have substitutes. We have MLCAD, Lego CAD, Lego CAD Design. This is, admittedly, is an old application. I would prefer to use the term venerable. The important thing that we need to worry about here are the three panes that are above. The one marked 14 over there is the is a way to choose the piece. Frame 13 there talks about the type of piece, and more importantly has the part ID. And down here in pane 12, you have the X, Y, and Z coordinates of pieces that you can position. A MLCAD text file, much reduced, looks something like this. You have columns for X, Y, Z, a part name, and a color with a string, in this case, because some colors there is the light gray, there is the dark gray, there is the old blue, there is the TARDIS blue, etc. So you have a combination of several different types of identifiers. So we'll start this out easy in Perl 5. How many of you here are working with or have played so far with Perl 6? Okay, about half. All right, excellent. So you've probably seen some. So everyone here probably knows how random expressions used to work. I shouldn't use that phrase. I will use the phrase how they work right now in Perl 5. I work in Perl 5 right now. I am very much, about 20 or so years of my career to Perl 5, so I love it. I still use the language on a daily basis, but I'm using Perl 6 now as more of, right now, a hobby, and eventually we will get people to the point where we have job descriptions for Perl 6. But that's the future. So, everyone immediately knows what this expression is, just right out the bat. Almost. Most of you probably do. Most of you can probably read this very easily. For a new person coming in, or anyone looking at Perl 5 code, they're going to look at this and immediately say, what the blank? What is that? It's just a bunch of slashes and stars and plus signs. Nothing there to really tell what it is. And even if you know what it is, looking along there, you're not going to get an idea of what the file content you're parsing actually looks like. You're not going to get an idea of an X, Y, or Z coordinate. You're not going to get an idea of this being an identifier or a string. You're not going to get that, even if you take the time to separate out a little bit. And even then, if you don't look carefully, you're not going to see the fact that you have a /D/S/D, and then along the way trips you up with a /W. So it's a little bit harder to read. It's a little bit harder to understand, even if you take the time with the X modifier to space it out a little bit. So you see that you have 3 strings of decimals, a string of identifier characters, and a quote string down there. If you space it out, you can see a little bit more. You don't have visual separation between /D and the /W down there. A little bit more work, but you still really don't know what you're looking at unless you have a side-by-side copy of your data file to compare that to. So you see that, yes, X, Y, and Z match this, this, and this. You can do that as well. That's perfectly fine. You match things that way, add comments in, that's what the /X is for. Open up the expression a little bit more, show more what's going on, but it's still not one-to-one. It's still not the ideal of self-documenting code. Some of you might by now be thinking of what was introduced in, I think, 5.16, the named match, like so. I don't, how many of you here have used the name match so far? Okay, not many. Okay, about 4 or 5 in the audience have actually used that or know what that is. This is a name capture where you take the string, say the /D there, and assign a name to it. I'm deliberately using generic names here for a reason. We'll get into that later on. But this is how it can look in 5.18, more documentative. If you replace the number with, say, X, you can get X, Y, and Z for your coordinates on that, and have a better idea of what you're looking at. I have forgotten actually about this for roughly a few years until Damien reminded me of that at the Perl conference in Amsterdam this year. I had forgotten completely about name captures in Perl 5. They're not that well-used feature. But in Perl 6, what we do is we've taken that syntax and simplified just a little bit. So the one of the things that you'll probably also want to know as well is how to actually capture content. How do you read that? In this case, I'm assuming that we're using the cap E flag where you have say for that feature, and you use the use $+. Obvious, completely blindly intuitive to the 2 people that have used the @+ variable in Perl and the @ that tells you the range of matches. It is intuitive once you know that it relates to the @+ variable. Completely intuitive. Perl 6, we're doing away with a lot of that, but we're leaving behind kind of a ghost, if you will, of the name capture. First thing we'll do is we'll use the module that I've created, and we'll get rid of the description of the /D. Now, what this gives us, as well as just the as just a string of digits, it gives us anything that Perl 6 thinks is a number in there. So if someone came along and used a half-brick jumper in your design to go from 1 to 1.5, now you're covered. If you have something like a star destroyer that you need to use exponential numbers for, then by all means, we've got that covered. We got negative signs, we got complex numbers covered if you want to, if you have, say, a four-dimensional or TARDIS or a real live TARDIS and go back in time, we can use complex numbers to represent points if you really want to go that far. I'm also deliberately using the quote notation number here to avoid complicating things for those people coming in from more of a Perl 5 mindset. The next thing we'll do to slim this down is get rid of those pesky parentheses. In Perl 6, these captures are automatically named for us. You don't need any fancy notation. So they're named like that. The last thing that we're going to want to do here is just one small change. You'll notice on the last slide, I'm going to say slash caret blah 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 slash caret blah 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 slash, and then plus to match. That's a little bit off-putting. It doesn't quite match with what you actually see there in the Perl code. There's no real mnemonic there. You would have to know again about the special variable add plus to know that it is a capture variable. So what we do in Perl 6 is you have slash slash, we use $slash. Much simpler. So the next thing that we have in that string, we have, aside from the identifier, we had a string there in quotes. Now, the expression I show you there wouldn't quite work in Perl 6, but in this case, the grammar common module gives you a string to work with. So we take the string, we capture the string, and you'll notice here that it comes back with the entire string, along with the outside quotation marks. This isn't a problem in most languages. In JSON or C or C++ or Java, they don't really care about whether a string is in double or single quotes or is in QQ quotation marks. In Perl, we care a little bit more about that. So looking at this, you might be thinking, great, I've got this string here as a blob, so now I've got to go back and figure out, A, what kind of string I'm starting with. Is it a QQ? Is it double quote? Is it single quote? And then match, strip off that in, strip off the back end matching, and then do some more work. Well, luckily for us, Perl 6 supports not only regular captures, name captures, but nested name captures, like so. So we have your string and look inside to match the content directly. And the grammar common module, when it's finally released, will have an alias for that, so you don't have to type both layers in to match that. It'll be like string dash content in the final option as well. But you still get at the first and final quotation marks if you need that for parsing, say, another language that uses QQ with several, like maybe Perl, one of those. So real expressions are both. So real expressions are, you can have name matches. You can still use the old parentheses. You can still use $1, $2, $3, etc. like you did before. Although, like we simplified the plus to slash, we simplified and got rid of $0. So now your matches all start at 0. Instead of having to remember that, oh yeah, because it is a match, you use 1 to use 1, 2, 3, 4 for parentheses. Now you use $0, 1, 2, 3. Like every good programmer should start at 0. You might wonder how we would, if you have a lot of these values, say we have our X, Y, and Z numbers, you'll wonder how we separate those. It's easy. You add an alias, like so. color equal, you give that a function, you give that a name, and you can reference it by the original name of string or by the color. And you still pull in the content variable because it's still aliased in that fashion. Simpler. So array expressions are, you can capture them, you can nest them. And of course, like we said before, you have your named variables for name x, name y, etc., and still print things out. This would almost work out in Perl 5 as well. Just change the plus signs there and put back all the noise. And there's also a notation to do alias, to just use the x or y for the name capture. And also, you'll notice as well, the original string we had \d with no minus sign. Now that we're using an actual number, we can go and use any type of number that we want. So when we find out later on that the file format's changed, or we find out that, oh yeah, I forgot to add scientific notation to that, you're covered. With one module and one term, you're covered for all of that. So like the -34 in this case. Now, we're going to get a little bit more complex, a little bit more in depth. This is a Lego ball contraption made by a fellow by the name of Akiyuki. Its entire goal is to move balls from the left-hand side of the screen through these rolling things up to the top level of the black structure and then back down. Is part of a long chain of things, and the world record was set recently in 2018 for roughly, I think it was almost half a football field of these machines consecutively passing balls from one to another. Terrific clanking noise, lots of fun to go watch. If you need noise distraction, I highly recommend looking for a Lego GBC, Great Ball Contraption video online, if you need the distraction. Now, we were talking back about MLCAD and how to work with Lego. This is kind of more my speed. The thing is that, again, as a programmer, what I would want to do is, instead of sitting and by hand taking one of these structures, copy, turn, paste, copy, turn, paste, like so, all the time, what I want to do is do that, obviously, in Perl. So we have here alternating red and yellow stages as we go along the structure. Each one twisted just a little bit, move it up, twist, move up, twist, move up, twist, like so. That is ideally suited to automation. So what do we want to do? Instead of worrying about all of the looping constructs, let's just look at something simple like this. You have a MLCAD file now that this time has a variable in it, and you do math. We have the layer, which will be the stack as you go up. So each time you go up one, put on your red, go up one, put on your yellow, and then repeat it. That way, we'll worry about rotation later on, don't worry. Well, we'll get to that stage. But again, we have a file, simple file, but we have these terms here now for 2 times layer, 2 times layer plus 1. How will we go ahead and throw that into our Perl 6 parser? Well, again, it's pretty easy to do. You have a number. You need to use double quotes. You need to use some sort of quotes around the star there, because Perl 6 simplifies all of those rules about backslashes and gets rid of all of that noise. All you need to know is if it is outside of if it is not a letter, then it needs to be backslashed. Not a letter or a meta character. It needs to be backslashed. So that way the so the plus over here doesn't follow that rule because that's a minute character. So you can do things in this fashion and match that way. So you have number star ident. But then you have to do a whole bunch of number star ident, number plus ident, number minus ident, etc. You have to go through, do all those choices, and maybe get something wrong, and then forget that you forgot to add in number plus number, number minus number, because someone may try to play around with that format that way. So what we would do here is, because we're good programmers and want to refactor, we would take our number plus number, number times number, etc., and group it into a row expression, like so. So this is how we create our own tags. You don't have to rely just on my module to get the number or get a string. You can create your own, like so, and it's just that easy. You say my regex and then regex name, follow, and use it just like you would use anything else. The expr here. And later on you can say expr number, because we can nest expressions. That includes expressions that you create. Those all get nested. So you say / brace expr number, so the number inside the expression and the identifier inside the expression is done that way. But what we want to do there again is go one level further, and why don't we just sort of hide that away? So we'll just change a little bit of that. This time now we're using my module, and this time what you do on your side is you create the value term over here, which is a generic, either a number or an identifier, say a C identifier or Perl identifier. By default, it'll be Perl, but for demonstration's sake, we'll say C. You take your expression, you take the expression tag and drop it right into your expression. / caret and then expression and parse, go on with life. And this will handle number plus number, number minus number, number times number. But also, because Perl 6 expressions are recursive, it can handle number times number plus number, number times parent to number plus number, close parent, and so on down nesting. This, if you've worked with any natural language parsing or parsing of, say, C, this is where people tend to get tripped up when they start writing expressions. They will go through and write an expression that exactly matches what they need, and then someone comes along and writes, 2 plus A, or A plus 2, turns around the order, and your parser breaks. With this, you don't need to worry. You drop in the expression replacement, and you have the entire match tree available. It will handle all standard C type expressions, all standard Perl type expressions, if you choose. And you get back the original text along with the full nesting as well. I separate inside there. I use terms to separate things, so I won't go too deep into the layers. But it lets you handle constructs like these. Yes, pi over layer, so pi over 1, pi over 2 is not quite the right calculation, but the real calculation will not fit on screen. I thought about it for about 15 minutes, and I can't get it to quite fit on screen, so we'll have to make do with this. But it will do this calculation for you, sight unseen. You don't need to worry about anything. It drops in. It's a straightforward replacement, and you don't need to go in and try to figure out how to match parentheses. You don't need to worry about how to do star, how to do times. You don't need to worry about, okay, is / parse before star is star, parse before, write shift. You don't need to worry about any of that. The grammar module takes care of that for you. The last thing before we move into the bonus round here is how to do options for regular expressions, because we've already talked about how they are as powerful, at least as Perl 5, how they can be nested, how they are recursive, usually recursive, expression matches on itself, in fact, and that you will find hard to do with languages such as Bison or Flex or Yak. Those, while they work out, you can take a while to figure out how that works. But again, with a grammar comma module, those problems are all gone. There's one little quirk here. The 7 point here. Some languages like to require a trailing zero, like trailing number like 1.2, the 0.2 trailing. They like that for the floating point numbers. Some will take 0.35. Some don't like 7.1, or just bare 7 point, like Perl 6 does. So one of the things that you'll want to do with your regular expression is you can make 2 or 3 expressions and put them into your grammar. As they'll clear up your namespace, you may have problems down the road trying to figure out just what goes where. You clear namespaces. So one thing that you do with your regular expressions is remember that in Perl 6, regular expressions are also functions that you pass in arguments to. So if you want to disallow the bare trillion decimals, so if you want to make 7 point illegal because you only want 7.1, 7.2, you take your regular expression and pass in this value. One second. Okay. All right. Luckily, we've got just enough time to go into our bonus round. Party on. Okay. So, the last thing that I promised in the talk, luckily we can cover a little bit of this. For this, if there are questions coming up, I will take them as they come, because we need to go a little bit slower on this step, so everyone can keep up. The first thing that we want to do is get rid of a little bit more clutter in our expression, because we have all this white space here. We have the /s plus, and then if you want to use if you want to make the optional /s star, we want to make that optional. In Perl 6, we just want to make it go away. Instead of using the regex, we use the rule designation. And then every term that you have, say the x equal number, y equal number string, gets optional white space automatically. You can override, of course, if you want. But this just makes things a lot simpler, a lot shorter. You don't have to worry. Did I remember to put white space between the x and y? Did I remember between the plus and the star? Where do we go with the braces? Do we want a new line after that? The rule takes care of all that for you. So that trims down your code, means you have less work, less mental work to process, less work for you to do in the code. And in this case, like the regex, it's just another construct that you drop into your own code. To be able to drop in a parser for a line. And by the way, when I say parser, just to clarify this, I truly mean an actual parser, because these are both regexes, and they're also the same language that Perl 6 uses to parse itself. So, so when you have an expression that you manage, you can actually parse a Perl 6 expression. One of the famous things that we like to say about Perl 5 is only Perl 5 can parse Perl 5. The nice thing about Perl 6 is it's parsed in Perl 6. It's not quite the same thing, because you can take the Perl 6 reg extension and re-implement that in C, re-implement that in, say, JavaScript, which has already been done, and take that reg extension and move it anywhere else, and put your compiler onto any platform you want. LLVM, CLang, JVM, anything that you can take and support a row suppression engine from Perl. Anything that you can do that with. So Perl 6 can move to any platform that we want. Now, we have we have our line here. We're going to go just a little bit further here and take this line and our expressions and package them up into a neat little package that we can move around to the MLCAD grammar. So we take that MLCAD parser, which truly is a parser, much like the last talk, and move that around. And this time we have one more term. A grammar here, for those of you from the Perl 5 community, is basically a package with mousse and special sauce. So there are proper attributes. It does compositions, and more importantly, just like mousse, it does roles, which is what grammar common is. It's a role that you drop into anything. So you can take that and use it for whatever you like. You can add that into your own parsers. You can go in and just copy out bits of code if you like. You can go in and add that to your own parsers, subclass that into whatever you like. So that's what a grammar is. It is just a fancy name for a class that has only rules and regexes. There's one on type, but we won't get into that right now. The important rule that you need to know for a grammar is the rule named top. TOP, all caps. That's how Perl 6 knows where to start parsing. So when we take our string, 10 space 20 space, and then 2 times layer plus 1, when we take that, that's where Perl knows where to apply the parse. It knows to start looking for the expression and label it X, followed by another expression, label Y, etc., and so on. We change, of course, the slashes are, these slashes are now the parse expression. And of course, we can go in and take a look at any of the objects. I'm not going to show you the parse tree for this because it is a bit ugly. But again, the mnemonic holds. We have been using slashes all along, and now we still use the slash for after the parse, or copy or capture the value into a variable. I don't have quite enough room on the screen to fit that. And again, we have a complex expression and regular numbers and all of that fun stuff. Okay, so I'm a little bit ahead of time here, and I do apologize because we are down to the last slide for this. So if you have questions, now was the time. So for the last thing, one of the things that I promised in the talk, and we are delivering, is a actual interpreter. Because one of the things that I give you alongside of the actual parser is you get a just-in-time interpreter for your language. So when you have your expression, as long as only uses pure math. This will handle pure math just fine. If if you try to add a string to a number, you'll get an odd result, just like you would in, say, C. Yeah. So this becomes effectively a drop-in, and this becomes a drop-in interpreter. So if you want to take your program, read out a file, and do just-in-time interpretation, maybe just fill in a few things. This is a simple way to do that. I designed things to be as simple as possible for this. So you literally take the module that you have here and drop that in and run. You can use the basic. You can use basic stuff like numbers, identifiers. The numbers all come from Perl. The identifier terms all, again, come from either Perl, or they are configurable for C or C++ values as well. So I'm by no means, I'm by no means fixated on Perl for this, because the world's more complex. The strings that we have here, strings like these will take, you can use that for, say, parsing JSON. You can use that for parsing YAML. You can use that for just raw identifier content, and so on. The expressions that you get over here for such things as 2 times later, there's also a prefix and postfix. So if fourth of you speak, then we've got you covered on that. So you can do postfix expressions, infix, and prefix as well. Those are all covered. And I am running a bit down here. So if there are questions out here as to why would you want to use this, why would anyone want to use this? The first thing that obviously comes to mind is doing, say, syntax highlighting for languages. Write your own highlighter. Write your own reformat utility. One of the things that you can use this in combination with is another of my modules, Perl Assist Antler, which takes a grammar for a language. Yeah. It takes a grammar for a language and, like, say, C, and turns it into Perl. So you have a Perl compiler, and you use my tools to fill in the file bits that you want.